Thanks, Max. Thanks, Jesse. Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you are doing well wherever you are. Before I start, I would like to say thanks to Jesse, Max, and Daniele, and the entire team of ING Analytics for providing me this opportunity to present my learnings and my talks here. Today, we are going to look at active learning and how we used it in a real life problem to solve an NLP use case. All right. My name is Anil. I'm a data scientist with Risk and Pricing Advanced Analytics, where we create financial, non-financial risk models and also pricing advanced analytics model. Right. So let's begin. And yeah, hopefully you get some knowledge out of this session. For today's agenda, what we are going to do is we're going to look at ARIA. So we're going to talk about a use case where we used active learning and how it came to our rescue. We're going to look at active learning in general. What does it mean? What is it about? We'll talk about the different sampling techniques that we used, some of the learnings and some of the best practices that we got from active learning. Also deploying active learning into our projects. We'll also look at some of the Python implementations, also look at our own implementation that we did, and finally we'll look at the results. Yeah, so let's begin. So before we start, what is active learning? Let's look at what is ARIA, right? So ARIA is an early warning system that we have within ING for the risk managers of wholesale banking. So wholesale banking is, let's say, a department within ING which deals with companies and those kind of things, right? So they have an early warning system, and then you have risk managers within wholesale banking. Now, as a risk manager, you are managing different companies, and these companies are in your portfolio, and you would be interested to see if there are any sort of, let's say, early warning systems that you can look for these companies, and you would like to know what's happening within the companies in your portfolio. So for that, there's a tool called as ARIA, and it has a lot of component, but let's talk specifically about some of the components or some of the machine learning models that we have within ARIA. So within ARIA, what we do is that you have different news items, public news, and we take and we try to create signals with respect to mergers and acquisitions, with respect to fraud, with respect to bankruptcies, sanctions, environment and climate change, and human rights. So I've marked the bottom two in green because that is where we use active learning to create, let's say, some of the solutions that we wanted to have a look. Right. So to summarize, ARIA is an early warning system which is used by risk managers to manage the companies in their own portfolios. Converting this into, let's say, a machine learning problem is what we have here is that basically, given a news item, we try to predict if it's about, for example, human rights or not, right? So it's a binary classification problem that we are talking about. So, right, so if it's a binary classification problem, let's say the way to create a model is pretty simple, right? So you have a data set with your labeled data, you train a classifier on top of it. Since it's an NLP problem, you do all the required pre-processing, the tokenization and those kind of things, and then you create a simple machine learning model. However, the problem that we had with this particular use case is that the training data or the labeled training data that was available to us was not fit for purpose. What do I mean by that? Is that the label data, the risk managers are interested in specifically negative news about the companies in their portfolio, because that would signal some sort of an early warning signal that they would like to monitor or they would like to talk to with their clients. So on the left hand side, what you can see here is that it's a news item that the risk manager would be interested to know about, right? So if it's a risk manager who's managing, let's say, uh, PNB Paribas as a company, and then you would say, okay, okay, this is something that I need to be aware of. But on my right hand side, you see this is a news still about human rights, but maybe it's not that interesting to a risk manager, since he is not dealing with the entities mentioned here, but then he is dealing with the entities mentioned here, right? But then the data set that we had, or the training data that we had a label of human rights for both of them, and that's something which we did not want, because if we created a machine learning model using the, let's say, the pre-labeled data set, we would get a lot of false positives, And that's not something the risk managers would want to see. They want accurate information and not, let's say, false positive use cases. Another challenge that we had is that also, and luckily, human rights and environmental news is quite rare information to find. That has let's say, bearing on some of the sampling techniques we use later, but then I'll come to that point sometimes back, right? So to summarize this slide, we had pre-labeled data set, but that was not fit for use, so we could not use them. So we had to come up with our own technique to create our own labeled data set. And that is where active learning came to our rescue. So what's active learning? So the definition of active learning is that it's a special case of machine learning in which an algorithm can interactively query a user or an oracle to label new data points. So that's the definition, but how it works is that it's actually pretty simple to see. So you have an unlabeled pool of data set. You use some querying or some selection techniques to query data from this unlabeled pool. You give them to a human annotator. The human annotator labels those data sets with his own knowledge. That is used to create a classifier, and then that the circle completes again and again. So this simple method is quite useful in let's say creating data set for your machine learning models, but also quite useful in cases where you don't have any labeled data set. In our case, for example, and then you can start and create your own labeled data set and create a model, right? One of the things that you would notice here is that, okay, the most interesting thing here is how do we select these queries? And I think that's, let's say, the crux of what active learning tries to solve, and then what we are going to look at today as well. So if you have an unlabeled data set, what is the, let's say, the most easiest thing to do is to do a random query, right? So you randomly query some of the points from the data set, you give them to a human annotator or an oracle as it is known in this case, and then you query as label 1 or label 0. Let's consider that for our problem, we only have a binary classification problem. So we are talking about either class 1 or class 0, right? So that is a random query sampling technique. The advantage that it's a baseline. So I think this is, let's say, the most brute force thing that you can do. It's a good starting point. And if in the future you create your own sampling technique and you are able to beat this random query, then that means your technique has some promise. But if you're not able to beat, let's say, random query, then maybe the technique is not that good. So that's random query. But again, here you're not using any information either from the data or from the classifier. So the next technique that we're going to look is decision rules. What decision rules do is that, for example, let's say you know that some features in your unlabeled pool can be more relevant to class one. In our case, we are talking about news items. So for news items, we do know that, okay, if I'm looking at environmental cases, maybe I'm looking at companies which are involved in oil spills, or maybe companies which are involved in some sort of pollution. So these are certain keywords which can help me identify certain news items to sample, but then they may not capture the entire landscape of the problem that I'm trying to solve. They are high precision, but at the same time, I would get a lot of false positives if I just use decision rules, right? And obviously they're not as good as a machine learning model, so I need to improve on that. But then decision rules based sampling is a good technique to begin with as well. The third sampling technique in the baseline technique is a clustering homogeneity, and as you can imagine, it's quite simple as well. You cluster your data set, and then, for example, on the right hand side, you can see that I have three clusters, and then I can pick some of the points from, let's say, the green cluster here and label them, from the red cluster here and label them, and from the blue cluster here and label them. And if I find out that for the cluster red, I have, let's say, 90% class 1 and 10% class 0. I can, for example, mark all of them to be class 1 and then create some sort of a data set to start working on further. So here, so these are, let's say, some of the very baseline techniques that you can start with, but then you are not using any sort of information either from the classifier, and then that's something that's a waste, right? So maybe let's look at some more complex sampling techniques that make use of this information from the classifier. So the first thing, or let's say the one of the most uh, popular sampling techniques is called as uncertainty sampling. And the idea here is very simple, right? So once you have a small data set to create a classifier, you can use that to label or to predict the outcome of that classifier on your entire unlabeled pool. And then you choose the points to be labeled by a human annotator, which are on the boundary of the classifier, or for which your classifier is the most uncertain about. For example, let's say again a binary classification problem, and then for a particular data point, your classifier says there is a 0.9 probability of it belonging to class 0 and zero point 0.1 probability of it belonging to class 1. Now, if you see the difference in probabilities, it's like around 1 minus the difference. So it's like 0.1. So the uncertainty is quite low because your classifier is very sure that this data point belongs to class 0. But that's not what you want, right? So you want a point in which, let's say, the probability of class 1 given by the classifier is 0.51 and the probability of class 0 is 0.49. And here you see 1 minus the highest probability is 0.49. And then they would say, okay, so my classifier is not really sure, maybe a human intervention or a human annotation could work there. So that's something that you can do here and say, okay, like, give those points to a human annotator, and he or she can, let's say, label it either class 1 or class 0. There are other variations as well as the margin classifier and the entropy selection, but which work more or less in similar ways. Now, what are the cons of this technique is that you need some sort of a data set to train a classifier. Even if a rudimentary one, you need some sort of a labeled data set to begin with. You can get stuck in the localized region of the decision boundary because your classifier would only predict, or let's say only give you points close to the decision boundary here. So if you look at this example, so it can get stuck here, but then you can use different classifiers to get through that problem. One of the, let's say, more uh, cons, or one of the more challenging things here is that this is very prone to, or it detects outliers more often than not. For example, if you look at the use case or the things that I mentioned here, you want to distinguish between two class, a green class and a red class. And what most of the time with uncertainty sampling you would get is a point A, which is exactly on the decision boundary. So this line is a decision boundary, and you would get a point here, which is okay. But then I think it would have been more useful if we get a point for sampling, for example, point B, which would change my decision boundary and get me some more information. So that's one of the inherent challenges or inherent disadvantages of uncertainty sampling. We can obviously solve that by using something called as a query by committee or a query based sampling techniques, right? Uh, Again, the idea here is pretty simple and intuitive. What you can do is, instead of training one classifier, you can train multiple classifiers, right? All of them are decision boundaries and they explore different regions of your problem space. Once you do that, and then you can have some sort of a voting mechanism to say that, hey, this classifier, like if you have a query of three classifiers, you can say, okay, like give me the points on which my classifiers disagree the most. Give me the points on which my classifiers, maybe two of them agree, one of them disagree, right? So you can also do that sort of an implementation, and that's a simple query based classification or a query by committee sampling technique. You also have more complex sampling techniques, but for our problem, to solve the problem that I mentioned before, we did not use those complex one because these, let's say, simple classifier or simple sampling techniques did solve our problem. But just to give you an idea of what those complex sampling techniques are, so one thing is called as your expected model change, in which you say, okay, give me the points for labeling. If I knew the label for those points, my model would change the most, right? So that's expected model change. And also what you can also have is called as the expected error reduction, in which you say that, okay, select an instance that would reduce the generalization error the most, for example, right? So you have multiple sampling techniques that you can use to solve this problem. But again, which algorithm to use? So if you're starting out with a problem, which algorithm to start with? And I think the answer depends, right? So if you have some knowledge about your data set, some knowledge about your class distributions, You can either start with a query-based sampling or a decision rule-based sampling, or you can also start with random sampling when there is no data set available. And once you have some more data set available, you can, let's say, for example, change to a more sophisticated technique like uncertainty sampling of that sort. So as you can see here, if you just go with random sampling, your performance would take a lot more time, so you have to label, for example, here 20,000 samples to reach the same performance. But if you switch somewhere after labeling a few samples, then you can reach the same performance easily using a query based sampling, or some sort of an uncertainty sampling. Or I think the best thing is to combine different approaches, and I think that works the best in my opinion. Right. Okay. So we have covered what is active learning now, what are the different sampling techniques, what we can use, and also what and how we can use those different sampling techniques to achieve our performance. Again, the point is okay, and then when do we stop, right? I think in this entire domain of active learning, a simple thing is cost, because labeling news items, costs either money or time, depending on the problem statement. If it's an NLP problem, maybe it's an easier one to solve. But if it's an image classification problem, still easy if it's a normal image or like a very simple image. But if it is things like X-rays and those kind of medical images, then your cost and time will be very high. And you can decide upfront, okay, let's say I'm gonna spend, I don't know, 2-3 hours, or maybe I'm gonna set $5,000 for different annotators to solve to label and give me certain points, right? So cost and time is a point. After, you can also stop when you have some sort of a convergence, that you notice that your human annotators notice some sort of a convergence. What is this chart? I'll come to that later during the results. But then essentially what I want to show is that, as you see, after this point, the performance is not increasing much even if you're labeling more points, right? So you can see, okay, maybe for this problem statement, I've covered my class enough and my performance is not increasing that much. So let me just stop labeling and see what performance I've reached. Or you can have some sort of a stopping criteria, and you say, okay, if my precision reaches this number, my recall reaches this number, or my AUC is about zero point 0.8, for example, then I stop. Right. So this can be some of the, let's say, the stopping criteria that you can use for your own problem. Right. So as I mentioned before, these are the simple different sampling techniques, and also what are some of the Python implementations that you can use in your problems, or to solve your problem when you don't have a labeled data set and you want to use active learning. So one of the, let's say, the more famous packages is called as Modal, and I think it is compatible with sklearn. You can use an sklearn model. It has an API which is similar to sklearn. It is actively maintained, and it has good tutorial and documentation as well. Similarly, you have other libraries as well, but with some adaptations, or let's say they are not following the sklearn API, but at the same time, you can still use them depending on the problem that you have. Right. So, for example, if you were to use Modal, I think that it's a simple one. You give a classifier, that like a sklearn classifier you want to use. You give your training and give your X and Y data sets, and then you can start working with Modal. However, what we have also noticed is that it's quite simple to implement at least the basic sampling techniques. Sorry, again, I think if the points here are not very visible, but then maybe when you have the slides, you can look at the code properly. But then I think, like I said, it's quite simple. You can see, okay, 1 minus your max probability, that's your uncertainty. You can calculate entropy with some of the SciPy functions that you have. And then if you want to use query based, you can define your own function where instead of using one classifier, you use multiple classifier. You can also use a random method with simple random selection using indexes, and then you can select, okay, how many points do you want to label at once. And what we chose in our problem is to do our own implementation rather than use any of the scikit-learn or any of the Python implementations available before, right? And it's quite easy to do as well. So coming back to our problem, and like I said, I think so one of the problems that we had is that we had an unlabeled data set, and we want to come up with come up with a data set for training a machine learning model where we exactly want only the negative news items and not the positive ones, so that we don't have a lot of false positives in the news. So what we did is that we labeled about 1K news items for environmental model, about 200K, about 2K for human rights, and then we used a combination of query or sampling methods, uncertainty sampling, query based sampling, but also decision based sampling to come up with the first set of, let's say, points so that we can use any of these complex complex sampling techniques. So there is a team within ING which is called as an ESR team. I think they helped us with coming up with the initial set of rules as well, and all the model and all the, let's say, the human annotation was done in collaboration with them. Uh, a simple logistic regression plus a TF-IDF NLP model works the best, at least in our use case. It worked as well. The data set that we created using the active learning technique, it met the predefined KPIs, and also the model explainability results that we obtained after creating the models, and those were also in line with the expectations, what you would imagine, or what you would imagine from such a machine learning model to do. On the right hand side, what you can see here is the progress of your target or your AUC that you want to measure. And you can see that as we labeled more and more points, our performance on our test set increased. And at some point, it starts to, let's say, slow down, and it does not improve anymore. So that's where we said, okay, like, I think we have reached the convergence here. So let's stop. And I think that's quite interesting to see that as you label more points, your performance increases, and that's something interesting to see as well. These models are already in production, which were put to production last year, and they are being continuously monitored to see model performance and drop, and then will be updated periodically uh, uh, in the system as well. Right. So here you can see that, okay, when you don't have a labeled data set, how you can use active learning and very simple sampling techniques to come up with a data set, to create a machine learning model which you can actually use. And as you use this machine learning model, you would get more data set, and again you can continuously keep on improving your model. And I think that's the most, let's say, uh, most important learning that you can take here, is that even if you don't have a labeled data set, but you have some sort of knowledge and some way you can create a label data set, put in some time there, and then you would have a good enough data set to use all of these sampling techniques, use all of the active learning techniques, maybe more complex one depending on your problem, and then you can come up with a good model that you can use. Right. So to conclude, I think yes, you can use active learning if you have a huge label of unlabeled data set, and but you have some humans to provide you the ground truth. There is no best query algorithm as such, but still you can start with random sampling and then switch to some sort of an uncertainty based sampling on what we call as the elbow technique. Again, no best way to measure convergence, but then I think the best way is to uh, put in mind and say, okay, these are the costs, this is the time that I want to put, and then you can decide if you have reached your KPIs or not. Some of the problems to consider are obviously humans or any sort of annotators are not unnoisy, and the cost and the speed of the annotation as well. Right. So that's it. Let's say from the presentation today, you can reach out, you can scan the barcode and reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have more questions, and or any sort of other questions as well. If there are any questions, I think we have a few minutes to answer them.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thanks for the nice presentation, nice overview. So we asked people to, if you have questions, post them in the chats. There is one. I also have a few questions.
Yeah.
Maybe because I'm a co-host, I can ask my own question first. I was wondering about, you said you're using news sources,
Yes.
external sources that provide the news articles for you. So I was wondering about because typically they provide tags as well with the articles. Did you have those? Did you use those? What about? I'm just curious about that.
Yes, exactly. So I think so. So when we wanted to train the machine learning model, we had the tags, but as I mentioned, the tags were pretty generic, right? So for a news item which is negative as well as a general news item, both were tagged with, for example, human rights. And then the challenge there is that if you use that as your class one, you would train a model which would give you a generic news as well as negative news. And then that would create a lot of false positives, because the requirement there is that as a risk manager, you have very less time and you only want to look at negative news about
Yeah.
the company portfolio.
So the tags that were
That's why
there,
we could,
they were too unreliable, essentially.
yeah, they were too unreliable and we need to come up with our own ways of doing it.
Let me ask a question from Nikki. Very interesting talk, well explained. And she asks, do you have an idea how many hours you saved by labeling fewer records because of the active learning that you implemented?
Right, because I think the main advantage of using active learning is that quite fast you can label, for example, 2,000 records, and I think we were able to do that maybe in a day or so, like setting up and everything. The challenge with using some sort of a random labeling technique is that the news items, for example, the environmental news or the human rights news are quite rare, right? And thankfully they are quite rare, because if you look, if you have 100,000 records and you have to label each of them, or even if you randomly sample 10,000 of them, the chances of you getting a human rights issue is quite rare. So that's why we have to use the active learning technique, and then we could label 2,000 news items in a shorter duration of time.
Okay, cool. Are there any more questions, or? I see nothing. So I do want to say that actually there's a project in my own tribe that's kind of similar. So I think it would be very nice to bring you into contact. We're also looking at news sources, but it sounds like you're ahead.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. Thanks, Max.
Cool. Thanks, Neil.